Capacity management process, similar to availability, but we are going to go through the activity of, once again, of reviewing current capacity and performance, improving current service and component capacity, assess, agree, and document new requirements and capacity, and plan for new capacity. So with capacity management, we start by understanding where we are, getting a good baseline for current capacity and performance. Then we identify how we want to improve current service and component capacity. We assess the new changes, we agree about it, we document it, and then we implement new requirements. And then we plan for new capacity. So once again, we're going through this act of understanding where we are, planning for new capacity, making changes when things don't go as they're expected to go, etc. And then the capacity management information system contains anything related to capacity management. Capacity management responsibilities include ensuring adequate IT capacity to meet required levels of service, identifying capacity requirements of the business, not just of IT, understanding the current usage profile and maximum capacity, sizing all proposed new services and systems to ascertain capacity requirements. Above points apply to all IT services as well as IT service components. Alrighty. IT service continuity management. It is concerned with recovering from disasters as per agreed upon and applicable SLAs. So the way I categorize this information is that availability management is planning for today. Capacity management is planning for tomorrow. IT service continuity is planning for the unthinkable. So IT service continuity is concerned with disaster recovery primarily. I'll just briefly read this quote. The process responsible for managing risks that could seriously affect IT services. So these are the things that are unthinkable. IT service continuity management ensures that the IT service provider can always provide minimum agreed upon service levels by reducing the risk to an acceptable level and planning for the recovery of the IT service. The IT service continuity management supports business continuity management. So once again, we have a process that is a primary function of IT, however, is still supporting the overall business and the business needs and requirements. IT service continuity management, goal and scope. Support the larger business continuity plan, absolutely. So we want to think about the things that are unthinkable as it relates to IT, but we want to make sure that those things consider how they would affect the business overall. Scope includes services, computer systems, networks, applications, data repositories, telecommunications, environment, technical support, and service desk. Also includes resources, people. What if, the whole project team just has had enough, they're frustrated, and they start to leave one by one by one? Something that's unthinkable. How do you still provide service? You still have to meet your SLAs. How does that happen?
I've lived through this. It was a nightmare.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Why did they leave?
Because we weren't managing our people resources. We didn't have capacity management, if I'm going to use that term. Our available group to work was 3 people, and we put the workload on them of like 6.
Wow.
And paid them not enough to justify their time.
Mm-hmm.
which turned into me doing a lot of work while rehiring.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that is part of the service continuity management. It's thinking about these things that, oh, that's never going to happen. That's well, why would they do that? Why would people just leave? Or of course we're going to win that contract. We've had it for the last 20 years. And if that's 90% of your revenue and you don't win it, then what?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or you fail to obtain your a certain level of security clearance that's needed to operate in the facility that you have. And so if that expires, then what? Your people can't go on site. You can't provide any services. So it's a lot of these things are unthinkable, and like risk, and we'll talk about a little bit about risk management. Oftentimes we don't want to think about these things because we either don't have answers for them or we really don't think that they're going to happen.
Yeah, I think the don't have answers, that happens way more than people may want to
Oh,
admit.
absolutely. Absolutely. So why even ask the question? We don't know. We have no idea. Objectives include create and manage the IT service continuity and recovery plans, which is the major output for this process. Conduct regular risk assessments and risk management activities. So these are your risk reviews. These are maybe monthly meetings where the team sits down and talks about different things, and we talk about risk. Maybe we don't document them. Maybe we don't escalate them. We just talk about them and then we just leave the meeting. Um, these are also conversations that we have with people like our suppliers to talk about risks that could exist between the performance or them meeting their SLAs or threatening to breach. So these are the activities, the proactive activities that are involved in regards to IT service continuity management. Provide advice and guidance on issues related to service continuity, similar to availability and capacity. Reduce potential disaster occurrence. So not only are we thinking about the unthinkable and things that could happen, we're implementing mitigation strategies and plans to reduce those occurrences or reduce the impact of those occurrences, because sometimes we can't prevent them from happening, but we can reduce the impact that it's going to have on the business. Negotiate and manage necessary contracts with third parties. Balance SLAs and cost factors while planning for service continuity. And assess the impact of changes on existing plans. Key concepts for this process include disaster, business impact analysis, business continuity strategy, life cycle approach to IT. I'm going to make a note of that. Assessment of changes, dormant contracts, that's always fun, negotiated or compromised SLAs, and regular testing as a part of the life cycle approach. So those are some of the concepts we're going to cover. So a business continuity strategy. It aims at reducing risk by developing recovery plans to restore business activities if they are interrupted by a disaster. So once again, sometimes we cannot avoid the unthinkable. We can't get around it. But what we can do is implement recovery plans to restore our business and our services as quickly as possible and as close to normal as possible if the unthinkable does happen. Business continuity strategy does take a lot of planning, and it takes a lot of refining as the organization changes. So your business continuity strategy and that you documented in 2017 may not be valuable in 2019 because your organization may look different. Your threats may be different. The resources that you have available may be different. Second, assessment of changes for impact to IT SCM. I need to come up with a coin for that. Study and mitigate the impact of any changes in IT infrastructure. Disaster is defined as an event that affects a service or service system such that significant effort is required to restore the original performance level. So disasters are not only risks that have been realized or incidents, which we'll talk about. They are so devastating that you need significant effort, time, money, maybe additional vendors, partners, resources to get us back to the original performance level that we had, which is why this process exists in the first place, because disaster, if the unthinkable happens, is so significant and so damaging to not only IT but to the business that some organizations never come back. So if we think about a bank, for instance, a large bank like a Wells Fargo, and they have a disaster happen where 10 million of their accounts were compromised in some form or fashion. That's absolutely a disaster for them. And if they take 3 months to find out what happened, do an investigation, get them all the money back if they can even get it, or get the information back, notify the customers, et cetera, it could totally shut down their business. They probably wouldn't be bankrupt, but people are going to move on, right? People are going to find new places to bank, even the people that weren't impacted. If I was banking with them, I say, oh my God, well, how could that even happen? I'm going to move my money and take my business to another bank. And so when these disasters happen, sometimes companies just don't bounce back from them, which is why ITIL is forcing or encouraging, rather, organizations to really think about the unthinkable in the first place. BIA, business impact analysis. Purpose of business impact analysis is to quantify the impact to the business that loss of service would have. So, for instance, loss of service would have. In the case of Domino's provides pizzas and wings and breadsticks. One of the services that they provide are delivery services. So customers are able to carry out their food, or they're able to provide a delivery service. What happens if Domino's loses its insurance for all of its drivers? Even temporarily, there's a lapse of insurance for some ungodly reason, and they're unable to provide delivery services for a week. That would be a disaster for them. So in order to It would. I mean, folks would leave, customers or organizations that have agreements set up with them to provide delivery service on an ongoing basis, or, every day at lunch, they would probably be hit. They would probably consider leaving. And so they could recover from that, but it would take a lot for them, even after the service has been restored, for them to get their customers back. So it would take a significant effort to get everything back to the way it originally was. Okay, key concepts. Dormant contracts. Okay, dormant contracts are contracts with third parties that become active only when triggered by a disaster. So for instance, I have insurance with State Farm. I pay insurance every State Farm every month. I don't need State Farm for anything else. Only when I get into a car accident is when that contract becomes active. Otherwise, I'm just paying for some service. So a dormant contract is something that remains dormant or asleep or inactive until it is triggered by a disaster. So that's a dormant contract. Negotiated or compromised SLAs. To negotiate appropriate SLAs with customers, which will be applicable only during a disaster. So sometimes there are SLAs that have clauses in them, which of course have been negotiated and agreed upon by the service provider and the client, to say that, hey, in the time of a disaster, we don't expect that you provide us with the same level of service that you have been providing us. We can actually be okay with, a subset or a reduced reduction in staff or reduction in your service availability. So even though we have the platinum package, if a disaster happens, we're okay with accepting silver for 3 weeks until you get your service back up and running again. So that's something that once again is negotiated um, by service design and something that's written into an SLA, but it's something that's established ahead of time. So you can't have a disaster and then call the customer saying, hey, we just got hit really hard. We can't provide you with any of these things in the SLA, but we can provide you something else. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. They're still going to want their service, and they're still going to penalize you for it, for breach of contract. Alrighty. This life cycle approach is not that important, so I'm going to skip that.